Hi, this is Nikki Bouchard with Brand Talk Studios, and I have Heather Reinhardt with me today. Welcome, Heather.
Hi.
Hi, so Heather is the creator and founder of the Amour de Soir brand. Did I say that correctly?
Amour de soi. Yeah.
Amour de Soir. So she's going to talk to us a little bit about her brand and what she has next and some very exciting stuff. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your brand?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I'm a writer. That has been my focus for the last, I'll say 5 years. I had ideas for books really 2008. And then it took me a while to figure out, like, oh, these ideas have been given to me because I'm supposed to write books. And then I eventually started writing them in 2015. And the first book I wrote is actually not the book that I published first. The first book I wrote will be out later, hopefully this year or early 2021. And we can get into that in a little bit. But as I started the writing process, I also simultaneously started a self-love journey. And I didn't necessarily know that's what it was at that time, but the more that I kept working on myself and putting in the hours and time that it took to write, and also go to yoga, eat healthier, be conscious of my sleep patterns, and really treat myself with a lot of respect, I realized, like, oh, this absolutely has to go, this journey I'm living also has to go into what I'm writing, because it needs to be shared with people and explain to people so that they can also figure out a self-love journey for themselves. So I ended up writing the second book that I wrote, which is the one that is currently out, called Go Love Yourself, and it was released in spring of 2019. And I wrote that one really quick. I wrote that one within about a 6-month period, and it was just the story of my self-love journey, including how I started writing, how I started a yoga practice, how I decided that everything is a choice, and the way that you handle yourself is a choice, and realize that, yeah, this is needed in the world, and people need to hear these stories so that way they can take from them and figure out their own self-love journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, right? We
Yeah.
need to share these stories with each other so we help one another. And then along the journey, after I finished Go Love Yourself, I realized that we can talk about self-love and we can read about it, but we don't actually know what it is until we physically start attempting it. And something that I had done in my years of my own personal growth is I had always lit candles and said an affirmation while lighting them. An old friend of mine had taught me that. And I thought, okay, I've always had a thing for candles, and I'd even had the idea that one day I would do a candle line. And it dawned on me, like, oh, I'm going to do this candle line right now in release with Go Love Yourself. And I created this beautiful candle line, and they're called Affirmation Candles. And there are 3 of them. I am, I can, and I will. And they each come with a card where you get to write your affirmation down, and then you speak it aloud as you light your candle. So you're bringing light into your life and bringing your affirmation into full creation. And I do find that that's a very useful tool for self-love, because it gives you a moment of your day to really focus on what it is that you're trying to bring into your life, whether it be like physical manifestation of something or really honing in on your own inner peace. And both are equally important. And then I also I teamed up with a jewelry designer and did a jewelry line for a self-love theme as well. So the Amour de Soie brand encompasses my first book, the candle line, and a jewelry line, all about self-love lifestyle.
That's amazing. Well, I've read the book, and it really caused me to pause in my own life and understand that I need to recharge and rejuvenate within myself, and that only I can do that. Like, of course, we want affirmation from other people. If that's our love language, or we want to be plugged in, and we want to be accepted, but ultimately it has to come from ourselves. And I absolutely enjoyed the book, and it has pushed me to go down my own journey of self-love and being healthy and whole. And it's absolutely amazing. And I had the opportunity to see your beautiful candles and smell it, and it is amazing. So do you recommend like a certain time? Is it an all day practice? Is it setting aside a certain amount of time each day? Or what do you do to practice your self-love?
Yeah, I think at first it becomes a certain time. Like you just start scheduling it in, whether it's early morning or right before you go to bed, or whatever time works for you. But you kind of have to train yourself to take time for yourself, because I think so many of us are used to just go, go, go. And I have this job and I have this family and this relationship and everything that's going on in our lives. It can be hard to commit to me time. So at first I started literally putting it in my calendar. And my first part of the journey was committing to a yoga class 3 to 4 times a week, which was a big game changer for me, because it was a 3-hour commitment each day. So 12 hours each week, because it was a 45-minute drive there, because I live in Los Angeles in traffic.
Yeah.
It was an hour-and-a-half class and then another 45-minute drive home. And that's 3 hours out of my day.
That's a big chunk.
It's a big chunk. But after about a month, the craziest thing happened. I realized that I was getting more done and more accomplished, even though I had taken these 12 hours out of my week, 12 or 16, depending on, or 12 or 15, depending on how many days I went. But I was getting so much more accomplished because my body felt better and I was able to just function better. So that was kind of the first thing that tipped me off into the self-love journey of like, oh, I created a really great yoga practice for myself. What other practices can I create for myself that are healthy and help me with my vitality? And that's when I started my writing practice. But yeah, so at first it started out as a very scheduled thing. And then as it went on, it kind of seeped into my consciousness. And now I live this self-love journey 24/7, where I'm constantly thinking about, does whatever I'm going to do next, does it help me? Does it grow me forward? Or is that not a great choice? And should I, I mean, I still have temptations of like, yeah, I want to eat the dessert sometimes, but sometimes I don't need to, because maybe I'm working on feeling better, and a pound of chocolate isn't going to do that for me.
Yeah, that is so.
Or like eating a pizza at midnight, that's probably not going to make me feel good in the morning.
Yeah.
But yeah, it eventually kind of just like creeped into every thought I was having of like, is this a good thought that moves me forward, or is this something that kind of stagnates me? I don't really believe that we move back in our thoughts. I just believe like we get stagnant.
We get stuck, right?
Yeah.
I believe that in one of the classes that I teach, I talk about that every decision that we make in life is driven either out of pain or pleasure. And, it's either pulling us to something that we want, or it's taking us from something away that's not good for us. So that is that's true. You get that. So what do you do if you are, or speak to the ladies who are going to watch this, that's like, I'm either single and I'm building my career, or I have a career and I'm a stay-at-home mom, or I am a stay-at-home mom, or I'm caring for my parents, or whatever it may be, not to feel guilty for carving out that little bit of time to self-love?
I think the easiest answer for that is that you cannot pour from an empty glass. Mm-hmm. So you've got to make sure that you have the strength that you need, and you've taken care of yourself and you're full. So that way you can then overpour. And it might be what society considers selfish, but in my opinion, it's not. It's take care of yourself so you can take care of others.
Well, they say that on planes, you put your own oxygen mask on before you put others.
100%. Because if you don't put yours on first, you're out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so not only will you not be able to help anybody, you're like literally out.
Yeah. So what's next? So you mentioned the first book. And you've got one book out, you've got a retail line going. So what's next for you?
The first book that I originally wrote is like a spiritual version of Sex and the City. It's called Past Life Husbands. And it's based on my life a little bit. It's fictionalized, so it's not fully me. But it's definitely based on some of my experiences. I realized that we kind of have this problem in our society that we don't know our sacredness, and that we are, and there is 1,000 different ways to say this, but like we're source energy, we're connected to the universe, we have God light. Like there's so many ways, however you connect to that is exactly what I mean. Yeah. And I recognized that we were just missing that from our daily life. And I realized that the story I wanted to tell was how I incorporated that into my life. And I began writing this book on relationships, and because relationships are mirrors. Like we can't learn about ourselves unless we have other people, including friendships and relationships with our parents and our siblings, and of course romantic relationships, and just relational energy. We grow off of one another. And somewhere down the line, that message kind of got really skewed. And especially when we got on our phones all the time and we're connected to everything, but we're really disconnected on like an eye contact and visceral level. So I started writing this and I realized that it was more than one book. And I was also really writing this very dialogue heavy, and realized, oh, this is wanting to come through as also a TV series, because when the dialogue's heavy, that's just straight up characters going at it. So yeah, that'll be out hopefully later this year, maybe early 2021, and it's ready for TV as well. And just moving right along, getting that off the ground, which is totally a journey. Like, I don't think most people understand how Hollywood works. Like, these shows that you see and these movies that you see, someone and a team of their people have worked on them for 5 to 10 years before it makes it to screen. It's amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. It's a lot of dedication. So
it's a lot of dedication.
And maybe that's why the Go Love Yourself book came out first, because you had to learn to love you before you could pour into this project.
1,000%. And I find that to be truer and truer every single day as I kind of go through different meetings with producers and actors and whoever I'm bringing into this. It was like, I could not have done this work that was required of me unless I'd gone through my own personal self-love journey. Like, there's just no way possible I would have handled this phase of life without knowing who I innately was from my self-love journey.
That's amazing. So, everyone's created with the perfect you and the uniqueness. So how do you think that the uniqueness that you bring to the table helps community, helps, you become a source for others. So how does that uniqueness play into that?
I think that storytelling is just as vital as water, food, and shelter is, because that's how our society continues to grow. I mean, right. Storytelling is a tale as old as time. It's what all of our text and religious beliefs are based off of, or these continued stories. And I went through a phase where I was like, should I be a writer, or should I be more focused on the environment? Because that's also something I care about, or health and wellness. I think, people need to learn more about the kind of foods that they're eating and the GMOs. Like, I had a lot of interests that were kind of at play. And at the end of the day, I settled on, nope, I'm a storyteller because I have these skills and do believe that it's a vital part to society. And the reason being is because our stories are, while they may not be the same exact circumstances, there's so many of the same rooted seeds of like, oh, I can connect with that. I can relate to that. And then if that person is sharing their story, I'll find something that I instantly relate to, and I can learn from them and better my own life from their generosity of sharing. So I basically just wanted to generously share my story with people.
Yeah, that is so true. I always say that if we don't tell our story, somebody else will tell it for us. And it may not be a version we would either want out there, or, it's perception. So
it is perception. Yeah, that's very true.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And I look forward to you coming to the Keys and actually being live in studio. Yeah. So this is Nikki Boussard with Brand Talk Studio, and we're going to say goodbye to Heather, and we look forward to seeing your projects come out soon.
Yay. Thanks for having me.
Yes.